What's up, witches? Welcome back to my channel. If you're new here, hi, nice to see you. My name is Syzygy, and today I thought it would be kind of fun to discuss some of my experiences while working retail, specifically working as a cashier at Walmart. I've worked at Walmart for about a year and a half at this point, and overall it's been pretty good. My coworkers and supervisors are cool, the job itself isn't too difficult, and I'm glad that they hired my socially awkward 16-year-old self. The only complaints that I have are experiences that I've had with, you guessed it, bad customers. I've dealt with a lot of extremely rude customers, as is the experience in pretty much any retail situation. Though I do generally have kind of a temper, I'm always cordial at my job, no matter how many people verbally abuse me. As a retail worker, you just kind of have to stand there and take it, because if you clap back, you will lose your job so fast you won't even know what hit you. So because I can't directly tell any of these people off, I've decided that it may be therapeutic to make a video where I talk about some of the weirdest and most frustrating customers that I've ever gotten. In Walmart, there is a cosmetics section where you can find makeup, nail polish, perfume, and some acne and skincare products. Because a lot of these products are behind glass or locks, there's generally a cashier attendant with a set of keys that works the register in the Cosmo section. There are a few people specifically hired to work in Cosmo, but occasionally someone doesn't show up, due to a sick day or something like that. In those situations, a cashier from the front end will take the position as the attendant for a time. I really like working in cosmetics. The vibe is chill. I can help people and answer questions about makeup I've worn, and I also really like to clean up and organize the whole section. As a perfectionist, moving all the bottles of different things into their perfect place is relaxing and fun for me. Except for when this happened. Because of this, when there is no attendant for the evening and I'm on the clock, I'm usually the cashier that volunteers to go down to the cosmetics section. One Saturday at like 3 p.m. or something, I went down to Cosmo to take over for the regular attendant's lunch break. When I got there, the line in front of the register was like 10 people long or so. I mentally prepared myself for the busyness and took over for the attendant. After the girl left for her lunch break, I managed to help one person in the line when all of a sudden a woman and her husband with a cart full of random housewares came and cut in line in front of everyone. At that point, I'm a bit dumbfounded by this, because this lady should be able to see the 10 people standing in line, especially now that all of them were giving her intense death glares. She asks me, pretty aggressively may I add, to check the price of this clock, so I just do what she asks and check the price. When she seems satisfied, she starts loading her crap onto the counter. Now, the registers in places like the garden center and in cosmetics don't actually have a conveyor belt to put things on. Because of this, these registers only have a 20 items or less policy. So before she can load anything else onto the counter, I stop her and explain as much. This woman full-on scowls at me and maintains that she will do her items in separate transactions, because somehow it makes it so she didn't just cut in line in front of like 10 people and clearly has more than 20 items in her cart. Sweet goddess, save me. The lady behind them did not look pleased. She was juggling a crap ton of makeup, and I swear that I saw her eye twitch. At the time, I debated telling them to go to the back of the line, but the lady had already gotten in my face a little while her husband just watched from the sidelines, eyes hollow, dead inside. I was 100% sure that if I told her she needed to wait behind everyone else, she would just punch me in the face. So I just finished her transaction as fast as humanly possible so I could help the poor women behind them. After the receipt printed for their second transaction, the woman snatched it from me and then just stared at me. I told her to have a good one, as I usually do, and then she just blew up at me, like a full-on mad woman. Her husband did and said nothing, as this woman accused me of being rude for, I don't know, helping her instead of the people that deserve to go before her? I have no idea. She and her husband stormed off with all their crap, and then the woman that stood behind them the whole time dumped all of her stuff onto the counter. All she said was, "What a nutcase." One day, I was working the register in the front end as usual, and this woman loaded about $20 worth of things onto the conveyor. There were 2 people behind her, I believe. She had a few food items and a pack of paper towels. Everything was good until we got to the paying section of the transaction. She ran her EBT card and there was like $9 remaining. I gave her the remaining total, and she stared at me for a few seconds before uttering a quiet, menacing, "What?" I repeat the total. She shook her head. "Excuse me, that pack of paper towels was only $5. There shouldn't be $4 whole of tax." I look at the price of the paper towels, then at the tax. Astonishingly, she's right. There's about $3 unaccounted for, even though the rest of her items outside the paper towels were all food and should have been covered by EBT. At the time, I was still new to the store and didn't know how to print a slip showing what the EBT had covered and what it had not, so I told her that I could get a supervisor to figure this out. Thus, I entered the "oh god, please help" code into the register, so that help would come shortly thereafter. I told her that it might be a bit of a wait, and she didn't seem to like that because she just started ranting. I hate this store. Every single time I come in, there's another problem, I swear. I silently wonder why she continues coming here if she hates it, but say nothing. Suddenly, a guy holding the leash of his chihuahua walks by with his dog, and all hell breaks loose. Ugh, can you believe it? This place is letting people bring their pets into the store. The last time I tried to bring my goat in, they didn't let me. I hope the supervisor will get here soon. I run a petting zoo, and I should be able to take my animals in. What a disgrace. In response, I'm just like, yeah, that sure sucks. She goes on, I should just ride my horse in here, no fucks given, what do you think? I just laugh awkwardly, desperately hoping for salvation. Finally, help arrives in the form of a guy that I'll just call E for this story. E comes over and shows me how to print the slip, and then we discover that the thing that wasn't covered by the EBT card was a jar of pickles. E explains to this woman that lately this specific brand of pickles had been having issues with the EBT system. He offered to run and get her a different jar of pickles because this lady was older, probably in her 50s if I had to guess. Instead of accepting the kind gesture, she went off and started yelling about how she was going to sue the store and sue E and I for being unhelpful little swines or some shit. After her toddler rage fit, I just kindly asked her if she wanted to leave the pickles. She groaned and told me to remove them from the transaction. She shoved the cash into my hand, got her change, and then stormed off with her cart. E walked off without a word after that. I think she broke him. This happened in October of 2020. I was working the front end, lines were long, when I came face to face with a Brony. I was kind of fascinated because I had never seen one in the wild before. Not an adult one anyway. I normally wouldn't think too much of this encounter or really judge the guy, but what made this whole thing really weird was 1, the fact that he smelled so strongly of piss that it made me dizzy, and 2, his odd companion. He was with this other guy who looked roughly about 10 years older than him. The guy was dressed in freshly ironed slacks, had his dress shirt tucked in, and was wearing a suit jacket. He kinda looked like a landlord. They had a ton of shit in their cart, and they were paying in separate transactions. The fancy, well-dressed, rich-looking landlord man bought office supplies, and the Brony bought a bunch of licensed Animal Crossing t-shirts and My Little Pony figurines. The relationship between the two was really odd. They were getting really close up onto one another, and it sounded like they were flirting, but the older dude referred to the Brony guy as little bro, so I really have no idea. Since then, I've seen the MLP guy 2 more times, and both times he smelled very strongly of piss. Wonderful. When you're a woman working retail, you're bound to get some creepy-ass comments from people that should not be hitting on you. I've been hit on too many times to count over the last year and a half, so I've just decided to compile a list of a few of the more interesting encounters for this section. The first one was when I was 16. I was working in the cosmetics section when a guy in his 50s came up and said he wanted to buy some whiskey. For those of you who aren't aware, minors are not legally allowed to sell alcohol, at least not in my state. I told him that I couldn't sell to him because I was under 18, and then he paused, looked me up and down, and then said, how sinful of me to have such dirty thoughts about you. Excuse me." He left before I could sputter a reply. The second experience happened about a week ago. I was working the front end again, and some guy asked me to sell him some cigs. I explained that he had to buy them at a specific register because I was under 21 and couldn't sell. He suddenly went on this diatribe about how cute I was and how I was marriage material. I just responded, like, dog, I'm 17. The guy stared at me for a second and then fucking booked it out of there, fast as I've seen a man run in the store. The woman behind him had kids with her, and all 3 of them looked pretty shook. The last experience that I want to discuss about this sort of thing happened roughly about a month ago. This one is less creepy and more funny. Once again, I was in the front end, and the customers that walked up were a guy in his 30s, his teen daughter, and a guy that was presumably a family friend. They had a bottle of Jack, so I explained that I would call someone over to sell to them. While we were waiting for someone to get there, this convo transpired. He said, "Oh, it's great that you decided to start working so young." I replied, "Yeah, this is my first job. I started working in August 2020 when I just turned 16. He clapped his hands and then followed with, "Looking to make a career out of working here?" I explained that I'm working to gain money for my car and also college funds. He whistled and then said, "Oh, I almost managed to make a career out of Walmart. I got cocky and fucked the manager. Got fired because the other manager was jealous." I just blinked at him. Before I could say anything, he followed with, "Yeah, working here is probably better for you than becoming a stripper." His daughter gasped and yelled, "Dad!" I was just trying not to burst into laughter right then and there. So weird. This story is possibly the most nutty thing that has ever happened while I was working. Thus, I'm gonna get really in-depth and dramatic about this beautiful retelling. So here we go. Picture this. It's November 2021 and the Christmas shit has already been stocked. The last few days had been nuts at work, so many people had just quit as the Christmas rush started to ramp up. Because of this, there weren't that many employees in the store. It's 7:30 p.m. and I've just returned from my break. Though it had been busy earlier, the store was pretty much dead at the time. I have about an hour until I leave for home, so I get on Register 12, which is located right in front of Registers 13 and 14, where the smokes and liquor are located. I'm not sure if every Walmart has the exact same layout, but 13 and 14 are very small 20 items or less registers. They're not the self-checkouts, they're just there for people who want to buy smokes and liquor, as you have to be at least 21 to man either of the registers. It's somewhat close to the customer service desk, but far enough that people at the service desk cannot hear people at the register. So I'm just standing at my register and helping customers when all of a sudden a couple of other cashiers come up to the front. One of them looks at me and asks, "Hey, did you hear that guy yelling in the store?" I gave them an odd look and said something like, no? They go on to tell me that they heard someone yelling in apparel but didn't see anyone. We laughed and just kind of shrugged it off though. They go back to do their jobs and I continue working the register. There's also a cashier at Register 14 directly behind me, keep that in mind. There's so few customers that I actually decided to just clean the belt while I waited for more people to show up. It is at this point that I hear someone yelling in apparel. I turn my head and see a guy ride by on a fucking bike. He's wearing a hood over his head, glasses, and also one of those bike helmets that the 10-year-old boys wear, the one with the plastic spikes on top. I didn't see the guy's face very well as he zipped past, so I just assumed that it was a teen being rowdy at first. It's happened a few times in which a teenager will do crazy shit in the store to film a TikTok or some shit, so I just figured it was that. Fast forward about 25 minutes later. A guy walks up to Register 14, right behind me. I turn around to look at him and it turns out that this is the same guy that was on the bike. He's wearing a pair of Harry Potter-esque glasses, the same bike helmet, and a pair of those monster slippers. You know those huge-ass monster slippers that the kids wear? He was wearing those. He came up to Register 14 with a cart full of a shit ton of appliances. There were hundreds of dollars worth of stuff in his cart, and there was a lot of it. Out of nowhere, he starts verbally abusing the poor woman cashiering on 14. He starts muttering shit under his breath at first, cursing the store out and the cashier. I only caught bits and pieces of what he was saying while I was helping other customers and cleaning my register, but I remember him yelling about how he was gonna sue both her and the store or something. He was also just generally insulting the store, saying things like, "These fucking assholes making me pay so much fucking money for this shit, I hate this fucking store," and other things to that effect. After the fact, the woman told me that he had accused her of having a gun behind her back or some shit. The thing about Register 14 is that just because it's such a tiny register, it also doesn't have a conveyor belt like the others, so she just has to ring him up very slowly because he has so much stuff. If I had to guess why she still helped him even if he had more than 20 items, probably because of fear. There was no one else around. For most of the stuff that he had, she has to take the scan gun and leave the safety of the register to go and scan all of the big appliances he has. The whole process takes like 10 whole minutes because of this. I'm just kind of listening to make sure he doesn't try anything because at several points in the transaction I thought he was gonna fucking attack her or some shit. Nobody at customer service seemed to notice this at all. Something to also mention is that customers waiting in the line behind the guy had all backed up way into apparel and were staying far away from him. Customers in my line were also giving him weird looks. This one lady sped off as fast as she could after I rang her up. Finally, they reached the end of the transaction and the cashier walks back behind the register. As per usual, she says, "Alright sir, your total today is 450 something. I don't remember the exact number, but it was in this range. Fucking silence. He just says, "What?" And the poor cashier, bless her heart, just nervously repeats the total again. At that point, he goes off on her about how the store is price gouging and taking more money from him than any of the stuff is worth. However, he does eventually pay her the 400 and something and then loads everything back into his cart. He turns to head out and passes the customer service desk. Now, I don't know if you've in the audience been at a Walmart late at night, but they shut the customer service desk down at 8 p.m. and grab a bunch of carts. They spend like an hour loading returns from different sections into different carts, and there are usually anywhere from 5 to 15 people doing this. This particular night, there's probably about 10 people over there. When this guy passes him, he raises up his middle finger to everyone and yells, "Merry Christmas, motherfuckers!" and then heads for the grocery side door. Everyone at customer service is unamused. After he leaves, I turn back to look at the cashier at Register 14 and she looks completely shaken. After a few seconds, she looks up at me with a horrified expression and just says, "What the fuck?" For the next few minutes, me, the cashier, and a few customers in her line that saw the ordeal are all just laughing and discussing what the fuck just happened. Near the end of all the joking, the cashier looks at me and says, "Do you think he's gone?" My response was, and I fucking quote, "Yeah, probably. I feel like the Merry Christmas motherfuckers was a fairly conclusive statement." And what do you know, fucking 2 minutes later, he's back with 2 security guards. The security guards take the guy up to her register and start asking her about this little blue washing machine looking thing. I don't know what it was exactly, and I couldn't find a picture that looked like it, so I'll just call it the blue appliance. Apparently he tried to grab the blue appliance thing off the shelf on his way out, and the security guards noticed. So the security guards are just asking her whether or not he had the blue appliance in his cart and had paid for it. All the while, the man is trying to speak over them, yelling about how he paid for it and, quote, "These fucking Walmart assholes are trying to steal from me." After a few seconds of confusion, the cashier reluctantly confirms that he didn't pay for the blue appliance, and the look that he gave her was murderous. Yo, I thought he was gonna fucking go at her, jump right over at her, over the till. In the end, it actually turns out that the blue appliance he grabbed was a model display one. You know how they have blenders glued to the shelf and vacuum cleaners out of the box sometimes to display what the product looks like? Apparently the blue appliance was one of these display items, so he could not have paid for it at all. When the security guard explains this to him, he demands that they show him where to get the actual boxed product. The two oblige, and the last I see of the man is him walking into the sunset with the security guards, off to go find the blue appliance, and where it came from. The gentle patter of his monster slippers on the tile floors was the only thing he left in his chaotic wake. Like 5 minutes later, I see the display blue appliance and a blue appliance in a box sitting up at the customer service desk. So my theory is that he and security found the item and he decided he didn't want to actually pay for it and then just dipped and left security with the blue appliance so that they had to deal with it. And that, my friends, is the end of this Walmart saga. I have a lot more different stories, and I'm sure that I'll end up with even more as time goes on. So if you guys are interested, maybe I'll make another part, I don't know. For the most part though, the Walmart that I actually work at is full of really nice customers, and the people that I mentioned in this video were definitely the exceptions to the rule. Most people are perfectly nice. So with that all being said, feel free to like this video if you enjoyed it, and if you're feeling extra generous, make sure to hit that subscribe button if you'd like to become one of my familiars. I hope you have a nice rest of your day, and don't forget to stay magical.